A dog's bark echoes down the wet alley, its paws splashing through a river of waste. Candlelight flickers behind shuttered windows, barely cutting through the dense fog clinging to the crooked wooden beams above. Somewhere nearby, a chamber pot empties with a splash, its contents vanishing into the same narrow trench where children once played. This is no imagined horror. This is the breath of medieval city life, raw and unwashed. Beneath the cracked sky, the streets are a web of shadow and sound. Boots slap the stones, carts creak, and rats shuffle unseen. Overhead, laundry hangs like flags of surrender, tattered chemises and bloodied cloth, catching the mist like ghostly sails. Somewhere, a baby cries. Somewhere else, someone prays. And between those thin walls of wood and wattle, the city dreams, a fevered dream of smoke, ash, and aching need. Bells ring, but not always for Massachusetts. Sometimes they call the tanner to work or mark the hour of curfew. Sometimes they toll for death. When they do, no one asks who, only how many. Death is as familiar here as bread, and often just as scarce. Inside a narrow house, a woman presses her hands against her belly. She labors alone, her breath short, her thighs slick with sweat. The midwife is late, or drunk, or dead. On the table nearby, a candle burns low, its wax dripping like tears. There is no clean linen, only straw, only silence, only the heartbeat of a child who may never cry. Not far from her, across a frozen courtyard, a baker slices green from the edge of his loaves. He stacks them high, binds them with twine, and wipes his blade clean on his apron. The bread will sell before noon. Hunger is louder than caution. No one asks about mold, not here. Not now. Smoke curls from chimneys that never go cold, their flames fed by peat and splinters, and sometimes, in the worst winters, pieces of broken chairs, broken carts, broken coffins. Ash clings to everything. It coats the skin like second breath, and every cough tastes of it. By the butcher's stall, flies buzz in drunken spirals. The meat is fresh, for now, but even that is a gamble. Spoilage hides behind salt and spice, and blood masks the scent of rot. The butcher whistles as he works, a tune his father taught him, back when coins were cleaner and his hands didn't shake. He sharpens his knife on a leather strap dark with years. His thumb bears the scars of 7 winters and 3 plagues. The poor gather early. Always. Shawled women with empty baskets, boys with cracked heels and hollow eyes. They know what time the soup pot steams. They know which baker cuts the heel thickest, which tavern might give bone broth in exchange for sweeping the floor. They trade rumors like gold. Who's ill? Who's hiring? Who was dragged from their bed by the night guard? Information is the only currency that costs nothing but time, and everyone here is time. Within the cathedral's shadow, a priest mutters prayers into the folds of his robe. His voice is dry, his Latin broken. He no longer believes the words, but he fears their absence more. In the corner of the churchyard, a new grave waits, half dug. The soil is frozen, reluctant. The gravedigger's shovel rings like iron on stone, and he pauses often, not from weariness, but to cough blood into the snow. The city wears its sickness like a second cloak, heavy, familiar, inescapable. Illness moves unseen, slipping from breath to breath, from kiss to coin to communion chalice. A mother crosses herself 3 times before giving her child a crust of bread. She's not sure why. Perhaps she hopes the sign will make the bread less poisoned. Perhaps she simply remembers her mother doing the same. In the taverns, life persists. Men drink to forget the smell of their own clothes, women dance for coin and kindness, and in dark corners, secrets are whispered between hands warmed by fire. A boy plays a lute with 3 strings, singing a ballad of a knight who never came home. No one listens, but he plays anyway. Even here, songs are needed. Not for joy, but for memory. And behind closed doors, locked with rusted keys and prayers, other truths unravel. A merchant counts coins stained with blood. A young scribe lights his candle with shaking fingers, already fearing the ink's fumes will bring fever. A girl braids her sister's hair with bones tied into ribbons, remnants of the cat that froze last winter. It is their only toy, but not all is grim. Amidst the grime, hope blooms, crooked and small, like the weeds that push through broken stone. A child gives a beggar her crust. A soldier kneels beside a dying horse and weeps. A mother hums a lullaby into her infant's still ear, just in case he's still listening. Time here is slow, but it passes. With every toll of the bell, the city folds another story into its belly. A marriage in the apothecary's rear room. A beating in the alley behind the blacksmiths. A confession whispered through a grate. Life is endless here. Endlessly cruel. Endlessly sacred. Endlessly human. And as night begins again, cloaked in fog and the scent of damp wool, the city closes its eyes without ever sleeping. The watchman lights his torch and walks the wall. His steps are steady. His face is unreadable. He's seen the city in fire, in flood, in plague. He knows it endures. Not because it is strong, but because it has never known anything else. Behind him, a raven lands on a frozen beam, its wings dusted with snow. It cocks its head, listening to the silence that follows the final bell. Somewhere in that hush, someone dies. Somewhere else, someone is born. And as smoke rises from the last chimney and footsteps vanish into the frost, the city exhales. Tomorrow, the mud will still be here. The blood, the hunger, but so will the stories. And beyond this wall, past the narrow gate where the watchman stands guard, something stirs, a new hunger, a darker promise, a louder cry. For outside this city, other lives wait. Some burning with vengeance, some whispering of faith, some carrying messages that will shatter kingdoms. The city has told its part, but beyond its rot and warmth, the road begins again. And so we walk. A single crow caws from atop the cathedral spire, its cry swallowed by the heavy sky. The fog coils around the stone like a winding shroud. Below, the city stirs, not like a thing waking, but like something returning to a ritual it never chose. The carts begin to roll, their wheels groaning across rutted stone. Shutters creak open not to welcome the light, but to brace against it. Red, cracked hands reach out to brush frost from the sills, not out of curiosity, but necessity. Morning does not arrive here like hope. It arrives like burden. There is no silence in the medieval city, only layers of sound. A baby whimpers behind a timber wall as her mother tugs lice from her hair. The smith's hammer sings its brutal hymn, iron striking iron like thunder striking a church bell. A rooster crows somewhere near, but no one notices. There are louder hungers to heed. Inside one of the narrower homes, a girl of 12 scrubs her mother's apron. The fabric is stiff with blood and broth, and the rain barrel she dips into is more brine than water. Her fingers sting with every motion. She does not cry. She doesn't remember how. Behind her, the table is set with 3 bowls. There will be enough for 2. Tonight, her portion will go to her younger brother, who hasn't stopped coughing since the last frost. Down the lane, the baker wipes sweat from his brow and slices the mold from his loaves. The flour he used was moving when he opened the sack, alive with tiny legs and dry wings. But hunger has its own laws. The bread will sell before the hourglass turns. The poor cannot afford disgust. The blacksmith's forge burns already, the heat roaring through the stones like an angry god. His arms are burnt raw from years of ironwork, his lungs blackened from breathing fire without the favor of saints. His daughter died last spring. He has not spoken since. Outside the church, the gutters are running again, not with water, but with the piss of men too tired to seek privacy. Alongside the marketplace, women crouch over their baskets, fingers purple from the cold, bartering turnips for leeks, leeks for meat, meat for salt. Near the butcher's stall, a pile of animal entrails steams against the morning frost. A beggar boy pulls a strip of fat from the heap and runs. No one chases him. Above it all, the priests chant. The words are Latin and meaningless to most. But the rhythm lulls the city like a dirge that has always been there. The sound rises like smoke from the cathedral's broken windows, floating over streets that have forgotten their own prayers. Faith is no longer about salvation. It's about survival. Disease lingers in every breath. It hides in the cracks of cobblestone, in the kiss of coins passed hand to hand, in the cold handles of shared spoons. You see it in the sunken eyes, the gray lips, the wheezing lungs that cough blood into wool sleeves. Outside the city gates, the earth is being turned again. Another grave. Another name no one will remember. A man stumbles into the square, missing his right hand. The stump is bound in dirty linen. He stole a chicken 3 nights ago. The Lord Steward made an example of him. Across the street, a nobleman lashes his servant for dropping a pitcher. No one watches. No one dares. Just as here is a mirror cracked in 2, one side sharp, the other blind. Children are not kidnapped here. They are sold. Quietly. Sometimes by parents. Sometimes by those who found them after their parents were taken by fever. There are no cries for help. Only silence, the silence of survival. Yet Even in this, love finds its shadow. A mother brushes her son's tangled hair as he sleeps. Her hands tremble from cold and hunger, but the motion is gentle. A man gives his last coin to buy a scarf for a woman who no longer recognizes him. A girl places a flower, brittle and dead, on the grave of a sister who lived too briefly to be baptized. In the chapel at dusk, candles are lit not only for saints, but for sinners. A young boy prays for the man who beat his father to death. He does not ask for justice. He asks that the man's children might be spared the same grief. The medieval city, for all its cruelty, sings a kind of sorrow that is too raw to be ignored. Its hymns are not written in parchment, but in soot, in blood, in frost-covered breath. The music of this world is made not with lutes, but with the coughing of the dying, the crack of splintering wood, the low moan of women in childbirth. And still, it sings. In the alleyways, the moonlight catches in puddles of water, reflecting the flicker of torches above. Rats dart across the cobbles, their shadows long and fast. A man walks with a limp, dragging behind him a sack of rags and bones. He mutters names beneath his breath, some living, some long dead. No one stops him. Above the rooftops, the cathedral looms. Its gargoyles leer down through the mist, their faces eroded by time and rain. They have watched centuries pass. They have seen the same sufferings where new faces. And yet, dawn comes again, not with promise, but with persistence. The dirt rises with the heat. The smells deepen. The sounds sharpen. And somewhere, in the heart of the city, a child is born. She does not cry right away. She listens first to the sound of the world she's entered. Then, as the bell tolls once more, she lets out a single, thin wail. A beginning, in the middle of so many endings. The sun lifts, pale and distant, over the slate roofs. The city does not pause. It simply continues, as it always has. But beyond the fog, something stirs. Not in the city this time, but outside it. In the forests, where the trees whisper of exiled nights and broken vows. In the monasteries, where scribes transcribe prophecies in trembling ink. In the hills where lords plot and peasants pray. The city's sorrow is not the only sorrow. And as this chapter ends, another begins, where power wears robes instead of rags, where sins are written in gold, and the weight of the soul is measured not in kindness, but in coin. We will leave the mud behind now, and walk toward the castle. A rat scurries along the rafters above a tavern's low ceiling, its tiny claws scratching like secrets too long kept. The beams creak beneath its weight, soft, furtive sounds that disappear beneath the drunken roar below. The air is thick, not just with the smell of boiled onions and stale ale, but with the damp heat of bodies pressed too close, of breath fogging the space between truth and illusion. Somewhere in the corner, a serving girl drops a tray, the crash cutting through the din like a broken oath. No one notices. A minstrel plays near the hearth. His fingers are blistered, the strings of his lute frayed, the melody barely holding together. He sings of a nobleman betrayed by his brother, of a girl who waited by the sea until her bones turned white. No one listens. The song is not for ears. It is for the space between the noise, for the memory of silence. This is not just a tavern. It is the heart of the city's night, where masks are shed and masks are made, where a man forgets his hunger with a cup of muddy wine, and a woman sells her sorrow in the shape of a smile. The room sways with heat, laughter, and pain, indistinguishable, inseparable. Behind the door to the rear, a widow weeps. Her face is pressed to the wood, the candlelight behind her flickering like a last breath. Her husband died 2 winters ago. Her son left last spring. Her hands still knead bread each morning, though there is no one left to eat it. A floor above, a prostitute wipes her thighs with a cloth that once belonged to her mother. She hums an old lullaby, more to herself than to the man snoring on the mattress beside her. Her basin is cracked, the water inside dark with days-old grime. She rinses, anyway. In a narrow passage, a monk leans into a cracked wall, watching shadows move on the other side. He whispers a prayer, half-hearted and trembling. His vows wilt like parchment in rain. The smell of sin no longer frightens him, it comforts. It reminds him he is not the only one pretending. The city pulses around them all. Its alleys are arteries, clogged with refuse, humming with secrets. Every door hides a confession. Every window flickers with ghosts. This is no place for saints. But perhaps it never was. Here, dirt is not just beneath fingernails. It coats every decision. It stains the soul. A child falls ill, and the healer offers leeches and incantations. He crushes dried toadstool into a poultice. Chance words passed from dying tongue to dying tongue. He believes in none of it, but he believes in trying. The butcher, knowing his meat has soured, buries it in ash. He says nothing. His wife is pregnant again. He cannot afford honesty. The town crier announces a hanging at noon. The square will fill, not with outrage, but with curiosity. Children will laugh. Old men will place bets on how long the neck holds. The condemned man will weep, or smile, or say nothing. Either way, his body will twitch beneath the rope. Then the city will continue, unshaken. Death does not horrify here. It lingers. Familiar. Predictable. Like the tolling of bells. Like the sin of wet wool. And yet, somehow, the city endures. Through the rot and betrayal, through the prayers whispered into empty air, it lives. It breathes in the cradle songs of mothers. In the clink of cups raised in remembrance. In the way two strangers press their foreheads together before parting. In the way a child feeds crumbs to a pigeon, then guards it from the cat. There is holiness here, but not the kind found in Scripture. This is the holiness of persistence. Of breath drawn despite the stench. Of love found despite the lies. Of beauty glimpsed through filth. The cracked stones beneath bare feet have held 1,000 generations. Feet of thieves and poets, midwives and murderers. Their blood has seeped into the mortar. Their laughter still echoes between the walls. Their sorrows are baked into the rooftops like smoke-stained prayers. In the corner of the tavern, a boy counts coins. They are not his. He will pocket two. He tells himself it is for bread. But it is not. It is for a birdcage. His sister wants one. She says it will keep the sparrows from flying away. Outside, the night deepens. The streets glisten with frost. A drunkard stumbles into the gutter, singing a ballad no one remembers. The moon glows pale above the rooftops, its light thin and unforgiving. Shadows stretch like fingers over cobbled stone. The tavern door slams open. Laughter spills into the dark, followed by the reek of ale and sweat. A man stumbles, curses the sky, and vanishes down the alley. The door closes behind him with a thud that feels like the heartbeat of the city itself. Above, smoke rises from the chimneys, thin trails of heat against the cold. They drift like incense into the blackness, carrying with them the breath of the living, the scent of scorched bread, the whispered regrets of those too tired to speak. And in that rising smoke is a truth unspoken. That this city, for all its filth, its cruelty, its unrelenting sorrow, refuses to die. Because it remembers. It remembers the soldier who returned with one arm and built toys for orphaned boys. The woman who buried 6 children and still lit a candle for each. The baker who gave his last loaf to a man who once stole from him. It remembers not their names, but their defiance. Their choosing to live. As the minstrel plays his final note, his hand trembling on the string, the tavern quiets for a moment. A heartbeat. A breath. A pause in the chaos. In that pause, we listen. Not for beauty, but for truth. And in that truth, we find our path forward. Beyond these tavern walls, beyond the flicker of firelight, the world turns once more. The castle waits, cloaked in stone and silence. Its halls echo with colder songs of bloodlines and betrayal, of duty and power. Where torchlight gleams on armor, and the stakes are not bread, but kingdoms. The filth of the city clings to our boots as we walk, but we walk. The gates of power await. A woman kneels at the river's edge, her knees sunk deep into the mud where grass no longer grows. Her fingers, cracked and raw, scrub blood from a square of linen that once swaddled her son. The cloth floats briefly, then sinks into the current, red threads unfurling into water already choked with piss, with dye, with the waste of 1,000 unseen lives. Her knuckles bleed, but she does not flinch. Instead, she hums. It is a song from before the hunger, before the fever took her youngest and the priest said there was no oil left for the blessing. A lullaby meant to soothe. The wind does not carry it far. It is drowned in the stench of horse sweat, of fish rot, of the flowers left wilting on graves too shallow to hold peace. This is not a city built by design. It is a wound stitched together by the hands of the desperate and the damned. A place where stone walls rise tall not to offer safety, but to seal the sickness in. Where the cries of the dying echo off cold masonry and vanish into the fog. Beneath the pitched timber roofs, beneath skies smeared black by endless smoke, 1,000 stories tangle and tear. The baker discovers 2 dead rats in his flour sack. He removes them wordlessly, sifts again. Bread must be made. The children will wake soon. In a nearby lane, the midwife sets her tools in vinegar, whispering the names of saints with every dip. A rusty blade, a soiled cloth, a curved hook. She's used them all. Some babies cry, some do not. The difference, she knows, is not always in the hands. Further down the slope, the apothecary arranges his glass vials in a row, powders of crushed bone, serpent's ash, dried beetle. Men come to him weeping, their palms full of coin, asking for cures. He offers hope, bottled and false. They take it anyway. It is cheaper than despair. No one here is clean, not in body, not in soul. The laws, when they are followed, cut like dull knives, slow, uneven, cruel. A boy caught with a stolen turnip may lose a finger. A woman accused of seduction may lose her hair, her home, her child. But a lord who lays with the servant girl and leaves her bruised, he is offered confession and wine. His soul, they say, is still redeemable. At the market, two worlds pass each other like ships in the same storm. The wealthy sip honeyed wine behind linen-draped stalls, their mouths slick with duck fat and sweet figs. The poor fight over a bruised turnip dropped in the mud. One child bites another for a crust of bread. No one intervenes. Above them, the church bell rings not for grace, but for debt. Indulgences are sold from behind stone columns. Parchment promises that salvation can be bought in coin. A mother weeps as she hands over her last silver piece for her dead husband's soul. The priest does not meet her eyes. In a narrow alley behind the chapel, a boy drags a stick through the dirt, sketching a castle with tall towers and wide gates. A place with no walls, no smoke, no screams. He draws the sun. He draws birds. He draws a door that never locks. By midday, the image is gone, trampled by boots, smeared by wagon wheels, drowned in the city's rhythm of survival. But for a moment, it existed. And that matters. Because even here, in the filth and fury, something human survives. A glance between lovers too afraid to speak. A child wrapping her doll in torn cloth. A laborer pausing to warm his hands at a stranger's fire. There is no nobility in this city. Only stubbornness. Only the refusal to die. At dusk, the woman who washed the blood from linen returns home. Her house leans slightly to the left, as if tired of holding itself up. She lights a candle and sits by the hearth. The fire is low. She holds the cloth, now mostly clean, in her lap, and hums again. She has no one left to sing to. But the song needs to be sung. Outside, the city exhales. The sound of boots fades. The markets close. A dog howls in the distance, answered by silence. Smoke curls from 100 hearths, lifting into a sky as black as ink, as endless as loss. Somewhere, a man digs a grave. Somewhere else, a woman gives birth in silence, the scream locked in her throat. Somewhere, a bell tolls, not for time, but for passage. And beneath it all, the heartbeat continues. Because this city, this rotting, gasping, relentless place, lives. Not through glory, not through virtue, but through repetition. Through the simple act of rising, again and again, despite everything. A city stitched together not by stone or law, but by hands like hers. By hands that bury, that bless, that bake, that steal. By hands that carry fire when the world turns to ash. And beyond the rooftops, past the steeples and the soiled fields, something else stirs. A gathering. A reckoning. A force born not in the streets, but in the courts. In the shadows of power where crowns gleam and daggers wait. The story does not end here. The river still runs, thick with the city's blood and memory. And the wind carries more than stench tonight. It carries rumor. It carries movement. And in that movement, a question forms, not of survival, but of justice. Whose hands built this city? And whose hands will tear it down? We turn our gaze now from the gutters to the gates. From the women who wash blood, to the men who spill it. Mist rolls low through the market square, curling like breath around the wooden wheels of a broken cart. It clings to boots, to skirts, to iron, soft as lace, cold as bone. A beggar's cough breaks the silence. Another spits blood into the gutter. On the edge of the square, a woman screams. Her voice cracks, dry and sharp, like what's splitting under frost. Her child was taken to the pest house before dawn, wrapped in linen, held not with love, but with gloves. She has no tears left, only rage. The townsfolk do not approach. Not from cruelty, from instinct. From the deep, ancient knowing that sickness is no longer just in bodies, it is in breath, in linen, in the silence after a knock at the door. Fear has become the city's common tongue. It speaks louder than bells, quicker than prayers. This place lives in paradox. It breathes, yet gasps. It thrives, yet decays. It builds and buries. The baker stokes his oven before sunrise. The heat roars like a forge, but cannot warm his hands. He slices mold from loaves with a rusted knife. The bread smells of herbs and ash, good enough to sell. Not good enough to keep. He wipes his nose on his sleeve, then offers a free roll to a boy missing 3 fingers. Neither one speaks. A girl walks past the brothel and the chapel in the same step. One promises redemption, the other warmth. She does not stop. Her eyes are downcast, her shoulders cloaked in her mother's old shawl. She knows better than to look too long at either. Vendors shout into the fog, their voices ragged with cold. Salt? One cries. Lice combs, another. Fish, still writhing. The fish do not writhe. But the lie sells better than truth. Each coin changes hands with trembling fingers, nails rimmed in black, skin blistered by wind and soap that no longer lathers. Hands that have held death, washed blood, raised cups and silent toasts to survival. Nothing escapes the sickness. Not even the rats. Some lie still in gutters, bellies bloated, eyes clouded. Others move slowly now, sluggish, wheezing, trailing waste. The water is yellow. The wine is sour. But it burns the throat, and so it is drunk. Beer is a miracle. Even children sip from tankards to chase away the taste of their own mouths. And yet, amid all this, the ritual remains. A mother sits her daughter on a stool, braiding her hair with slow, reverent fingers. Each twist is a memory, each not a prayer. The girl will leave soon, to work the dye vats until her arms burn purple. But this moment is soft, clean, human. In a chapel near the edge of the square, a priest lights a single candle. Not for the holy day, not for the congregation, for a sinner. A man who knelt in confession last week with blood on his hands and a tremble in his voice. A man the priest still dreams of, though he dares not admit it. The flame flickers. Guilt flickers with it. By the tavern steps, a blind man leans on a stick worn smooth by years. Children gather round, offering crust for stories. He tells of a queen who turned a stone to save her kingdom. Of a knight who fed his horse before himself. He has never left the city, but his words have. They travel where he cannot. In the children, they believe. Because the lie feeds more than the truth ever could. Fog thickens. The market thins. A silence settles, not peaceful, but deliberate. The kind of quiet that makes space for memory, for mourning, for breath. And the dirt remains. Always. In the cracks of the stones, beneath the nails, in the soul. But the people remain too. The boy who steals an apple and leaves half on a doorstep. The girl who washes her dying grandmother's feet with rainwater caught in her hands. The man who gives his wife the last boiled onion and smiles as she eats. In the ashes of this city's endless fire, something stubborn grows. Not faith, not law, not even love. Hope, disguised as memory. A boy draws on the frost-covered window of a butcher's stall. A boat, with sails. He's never seen the sea. His sister tells him it's blue like the sky used to be. The drawing fades with his breath. But for a heartbeat, it lives. And that's where we begin. Because while the city breaks bones, it cannot break the dreaming. The dreaming survives in lullabies hummed in basements. In spoons carved from scrap wood. In stories passed from dying lips to listening ears. This is not a tale of kings or conquest. This is a tale of breath. Of cracked hands and stubborn hearts. Of survival that isn't noble, but necessary. And beyond the square, through the fog, there is movement, not of armies, but of choices. A woman tears her prayer book and uses it to light the hearth. A boy refuses to steal. A girl leaves the dye vats and walks toward the manor house, her braid unraveling in the wind. There is no revolution here. Not yet. But the weight is shifting. Something stirs in the silence, not peace, but possibility. And we follow it. Into the shadowed halls of power. Into the chambers where coin buys silence and secrets were silk. Into the places where the sickness was born, not in gutters, but in golden rooms. We follow the fog. Because the truth is not found in the church or the brothel, in the bread or the bile, it is found in the space between. In the breath between bargains. In the pause before prayer. In the last look of a mother before she lets go. We carry that breath forward. To the gatehouse. To the court. To the ones who rule this rotting dream. The chapter closes, not with an answer, but with a question that burns in the mist. What is filth, when it wears a crown? A leather boot sinks into the mud with a sound like meat torn from bone. Not stone, not gravel, but soil pressed down by centuries of footsteps, soaked with blood, piss, rain, and secrets. The ground remembers. Every layer is a memory, rotting. Every footprint a confession. This is not a street. It is a graveyard of dignity. A wagon wheel lies twisted near the gutter, one side half buried, swollen with damp. Like a bone, snapped and forgotten, too large to bury, too painful to look at. It tilts toward the slums as if trying to crawl away from what it once carried. Above, crows fight on the rooftops. Black smudges against a sky the color of boiled wool. Their calls are harsh, angry. The rooftops, once timbered with hope, now drip smoke from chimney mouths like dying breath. And in the square, a fool dances. His face is pale with ash. His bells do not jingle, they rust. His laughter pierces the cold morning, desperate and shrill. He is paid in copper and cruelty. A child throws a turnip at his feet. He bows anyway. Because in this place, humiliation is a currency, and he cannot afford pride. The air stinks of life. Not the kind sung about in tapestries, but the kind that seeps from boils, from butchered pigs, from the breath of the dying. A man slumps against a wall, his lips blue, his eyes open to a sky that no longer sees him. He is not helped, not because they do not care, but because they have cared too many times before. To survive here, you must unlearn mercy. Children play beside a dead dog, giggling as they prod its swollen belly with sticks. They are not cruel. They are alive. And laughter, even in ruin, is resistance. It means they have not yet surrendered to silence. A few streets away, the mayor's house casts its shadow long and unforgiving. Imported stone, perfectly cut. Clean windows, iron-banded doors. His chimneys burn sweet-smelling oak, not dung. His wine is aged, his lamb seasoned. He speaks of God at supper and beats his servant by morning light. Here, justice is weighed on the same scale as onions. A woman stands at the edge of the alley, clutching her last blanket, wool worn thin as parchment. She trades it for a handful of onions that smell already of rot. She will boil them in water too dirty to drink, whispering to the pot as if the heat might summon flavor. There is no fairness, only transaction. And yet, even here, beauty insists on surviving. In the dye house, women sing. Their voices crack, but their harmony is ancient. It drifts through the windows like perfume, mingling with the sharp stench of vinegar and sweat. Their fingers are stained red and indigo. Their backs ache, but they sing anyway. In the tanner's shed, a man sharpens his knife. He lays the goat's hide flat, whispers a short prayer under his breath, not to God, but to the animal. He was not always this gentle. Life has made him careful. By the scaffold, a group gathers. An execution is expected. They do not come for blood. They come because it is something to share. A moment. A gaze. A silence. Two strangers lock eyes. One offers a crust of bread. The other says thank you with their hands. Every hand in this city holds a story. Every palm bears scars no scripture has room to name. The bell tolls. Low, slow. Not for the hour. Not for the church. But for remembrance. For the ones who did not rise this morning. For the ones who will not sleep tonight. For the woman who died screaming. For the child who vanished without sound. And as its echo fades into the bones of buildings, the city seems to pause. Not in peace, the city knows no peace. But in reverence. Behind every shutter, a candle flickers. Behind every door, a tale waits, whispered, rotted, real. Some are told in sighs, others in sobs. Many go untold, scratched only into the memory of wood, of stone, of air. The fool stops dancing. He looks up, face smeared with soot and sweat. A single coin lies at his feet. He does not bend to take it. Not yet. He listens. Because even fools understand when the city speaks. It speaks in silence. In the twitch of a curtain. In the creak of a step. In the way fog gathers near the church doors but never enters. In the way the rats move not in panic, but with purpose. The mayor eats. The children sleep. The guard's chains shift. But beneath it all, beneath the mud and the rot and the chanting of monks, the city breathes. It has more to say. There is a chamber deep beneath the cobbles where gold is counted in candlelight. There is a nun who writes forbidden poems in the margins of prayer books. There is a well that has never dried, though no one dares drink from it. And there is a secret, a truth buried not in books, but in blood, a truth that will rise. The camera turns now away from the fool, away from the child's laughter, away from the dying man slumped at the wall. It drifts higher, toward the rooftops, where the crows still argue, still witness. The sky darkens. Smoke climbs. Somewhere, a door slams. Somewhere, a knife is drawn. And still the city does not sleep. It waits. Because the story is not yet done. Not until the filth is followed to its source. Not until the ones behind the clean windows are seen. Not until the rod in gold is named. We have walked the gutters. We have knelt in the dirt. Now we climb. Up the stone steps. Through the iron gates. Into the court, where power smiles with clean hands and hides the blood beneath its rings.